Welcome to Stars Launch Pod, where we chat with innovators who are overcoming challenges, pushing boundaries, and collaborating to make space more accessible and sustainable for humanity, one launch at a time.
It's one small step for man.
Here's your host, Susan Wise.
Hi, and welcome to STARS LaunchPod, Space, Technology, and Research Sciences, brought to you by starsciences.org, where we connect, collaborate, and accelerate. I'm your host, Susan Wise, and happy to have with us Dr. Swati Mohan, an aerospace engineer who's worked on planetary science spacecraft at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And it's such an honor to have you here. Hi, and welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on your podcast today.
Well, I was very excited, and especially when I found out you're a big Star Trek fan.
I am.
I was too growing up, although you were Next Generation. I'm a tad bit older than you, so I like the original series.
I appreciate the original series, but I definitely grew up on Next Generation and Voyager.
And that's something that kind of motivated you and inspired you, I guess?
Not initially, I didn't recognize it as something that was creating motivation. It was just my hobby, and I liked science fiction, doing Star Trek, Star Wars, X-Files, kind of anything in that realm. It wasn't until much later, closer to the end of high school, that I actually considered space as a career.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now to further the space industry, how that's going.
Sure. So I focus on robotic spacecraft that go out into the solar system. So what I'm working on right now is a technology payload that would go on these spacecraft that allow them to figure out where they are and travel by themselves to any location in our solar system. So it has the smarts on board to figure out where in the solar system it is by looking at different optical targets and getting measurements from the ground through radio signals and using that to calculate where it is, triangulate where it is in space, and then figure out where it needs to go based on a plan that it has on board and calculate how it needs to move itself to stay on that plan. So having this technology on board would let our spacecraft be much more autonomous in space, enable us to send more spacecraft out into the solar system that can kind of take care of themselves as they leave Earth, which kind of enables fleets of spacecraft, much more smart spacecraft, especially when we want to do science out in the farther reaches of the solar system where the time to communicate to the spacecraft gets much, much longer. The more smarts you have on board, the more cool and interesting ways that the spacecraft can maneuver to do interesting science out in the farther parts of the solar system.
So the technology is probably leaps and bounds from when you worked on Perseverance and the rover.
Actually, this technology was first demonstrated in space in the 1990s through a mission called Deep Space One and Stardust. But it was demonstrated for that particular mission and kind of proved the technology, but we haven't actually gotten it into a form that it can be easily put onto many different spacecraft. So that's what we're working on now. So it's kind of like a oldie but goodie, but kind of revamped for the new age.
That's exciting. I mean, because everybody's got we've got our eyes on the moon, and now, a lot of people got their eye on Mars, and who knows what else.
Exactly. And now there's such a revigoration of the space industry with the whole return to moon, with people going back to moon, that this technology is now much more essential to where we are in the space program, not just with NASA, but with all the commercial industries, because there are so many more people sending spacecraft out into the solar system. Back in the 90s, it was really just the large government organizations, and they would send one or two, every few years. So with that level, you can handle it, right? There's not enough demand that you can't handle on the ground. Now with all the different new space companies sending spacecraft with the desire to send both manned spacecraft and unmanned spacecraft in fleets, you do need this technology to be able to handle that.
You think the private sector getting involved has helped push things?
I have two ideas for the private sector. One, I think it does help make the space industry more efficient. So private industry is really good at being able to take one technology, do it the same way over and over again, and get economies of scale that the government just can't efficiently do, right? So getting the cost
Right.
down, getting processes down where you're doing the same thing over and over again, that really is what helps bring the cost down for any particular item, whether it's, in product where we got machines to actually print out stuff and as opposed to people like hand sewing, or things like launch vehicles where you can manufacture 10 or 20 at once and it's not like this bespoke one launch vehicle at a time or one spacecraft at a time. So I think that helps because as it lowers cost of access to space, there are a lot more applications and customers that can leverage it. So it builds this space economy that hasn't been possible to date because the cost barrier to entry was very high. The flip side of that is the commercialization of space. I tend to be a space purist where it's the last frontier that really is agnostic of all our politics here on Earth and country boundaries and things like that. So I prefer to keep space as like a scientific discovery place that is for all mankind, not necessarily for profit or commercialization or
I totally respect that. Yes.
country boundaries. So, there's pros and cons to both sides, and I completely recognize there's space for both potentially, and it's just personal preference, and it's kind of an interesting time to see how it plays out.
True. Looking at your story and your journeys, do you have any aha moments, a moment where you were just like, oh, yes, this is it, or, that was your aha?
I guess I kind of have two. I'll give the first one, and there's one in terms of like, aha, this is, I'm going into space as opposed to before. And the other one is much more of like a technical, like we got this thing to work, hallelujah type of moment. And so the first one, throughout my childhood, I actually wanted to be a physician. I wanted to be a pediatrician. So like I was firmly on the medicine route from like age 5 through junior year of high school. And science fiction and space was a hobby. It was a background thing. Like I watched Star Trek, but I knew Star Trek wasn't real. It was fiction. So it kind of had put in my mind, like, you can't do that because it doesn't exist yet. So I was like, you can be a doctor. There are doctors, that's a attainable profession. And it was really on that path and like trying to do the best that I could do on that. And it wasn't necessarily coming easily, and it was complicated, and like the memorization of the biology wasn't necessarily my strong suit. At some point in junior year or in sophomore year, I had done a science project working with a lab up in Philadelphia, and I was really proud of this science experiment. Like I had done it in conjunction with them, so like I had actually gone into the lab and like pipetted and things like that. But the experiment research was, fundamentally then they gave me the project, but I was proud of the science fair project because it sounded so cool and it sounded so, like advanced for what I was presenting as like a sophomore science project. And I didn't even place like in my high school science fair competition. I'm like, the plant thing got a higher thing than my like fancy thing. Like, what's going on here? Like, I don't understand why I didn't even place. So when I was picking my project for the next year, I was like, I have to do better. Like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, this has got to be. And I finally was in physics class, and my mom made some comment, I think, about, she's like, well, you like space so much. Why don't you do something about that? I was like, well, you can't do something about space. Like, I don't have a telescope. I don't have a spacecraft. Like, it takes years to do this. I was giving all these reasons. And I was like, okay, I'll try to figure out. I got these bunch of books. And I eventually did a project on how to grow plants on Mars, looking at like they awarded a plant thing from last year. So maybe I can take that and make something of it. This was way before, the movie or the book Martian, where they're growing plants on Mars thing. But it was essentially that. Like I took soil, I mixed it with iron oxide, and I grew plants at different rates and measured what it grew. And to me, it was a very simple project. I didn't necessarily think it would place because it was so simple, but it was entirely me, right? Like I knew exactly why I was doing it. I knew what the motivation was, why I wanted to do it, how I conceived of it, like what the steps were, like every step of the process. Like I knew exactly what I had done, why I had done it, like all the choices. And I actually placed, right? Like at that year, like I won the high school. I went to regionals. I got, a scholarship out of the regional science fair. And that moment after like, okay, like the bio thing, like I went this far, it was hard and I didn't get any awards for it. And then I got to physics and it was so easy. And I used that to do this space project, which was so easy. And like, I'm getting the rewards for this. And it was easy and a lot more interesting to me anyway, because I cared about the topic. That was like, maybe maybe there's something here that I should actually go explore. So that summer, I had finally convinced my parents to send me to space camp that
fun.
summer. And then after a week I came back, I had an internship at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center,
Wow.
where I was building a model rocket. So between the science fair project saying like, why don't you pull on this thread a little bit more? And then the space camp where, I mean, it's super fun and it's like a day camp, but there are moments where like you get to pretend to be an astronaut, you get to pretend to be these roles that are actually real professions. And the astronaut ones seemed hard to follow, but there's a rotation in there where you go to mission control. As I had mission control, and I was like, this I can do. Like I can do this job. And that was the first time I was like, oh, there's a job that's not like in the 24th century, a job that's here and now that I can work to that, you know, is much more based on like the physics that I'm good at. That's still super cool because it works for NASA. And then I went to Goddard and actually like worked for NASA and like got to build these little rockets. I'm like, okay, this is it. I pulled on this thread. It's way more possible and easier and funner than I thought it would be. So that's it. Like at the end of the summer, I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I like ditched all the medicine stuff, went full 90 degrees, like all of the places that I was considering to apply for college became aerospace. Like I started working on it and I haven't looked back since then.
You know, even though you didn't go down the path of medicine, it's got to make you feel good knowing that the work that you do allows all these medical advancements to happen in space. So really, you still have a hand in it.
I have a hand in it. I think probably more because I ended up marrying a pediatrician, so I get it vicariously through him. So we get a little bit of both. The other ha-ha moment is from a technical sense, and I like bringing it up because it shows the power of perseverance in the engineering process. So on Mars 2020, on Perseverance, we were adding a new part of the landing system where we were actually adding eyes to the landing system, right? The previous mission had used radar to land, which is kind of just like closing your eyes and stopping when you feel that your hand has touched the wall. Here we were actually using a camera, so looking at the ground to figure out where we are. So it involved a pretty strategic inclusion of that new technology into an existing framework that we had inherited. So we're testing this new sensor package. It's my job to integrate the two. So they had gotten it working at the lower level, just the payload package, and it was my job to put it into the whole system and prove that they connected up so that we could do this like end-to-end run showing that the Perseverance landing as we had designed it as the mission needed could actually work. Because without this technology, the risk of landing goes up by like 15%. It's like 15% more risky. It goes from 99% safe to like 80 or something like that. And it's not working. Like they had proven it at the lower level and I had worked for like weeks to figure out like why it wasn't working. It looked like all the data connections were through. It looked like all the communications were through. But for some reason, like as you took the second image, it would just crap out. Like I could see the images and they looked like they were bars, but it was just crapping out, like just not figuring out where it is. So like it was like the Friday before everyone was going for the December holiday breaks. And I was like, I don't know what else I can try. I've literally tried like every piece to check out that it can check out. It all looks like it's working, but then the whole system is not working. And I don't know what else I can do. The only thing that we can do is like run the full landing and like fingers crossed, hope it works. Up until then, I had been running like a subset because it takes a long time to get configured to do that landing. So for the 7 minutes that it takes for landing, it actually takes like 8 or 9 hours to actually go through the whole thing. So I didn't want to eat up that whole time when I knew it wasn't working. I exhausted everything. Didn't expect it to work, but just like maybe it'll tell me where to look better, what the problem is. So I have myself and 2 others, because it takes multiple people to to run this at that point. Like we're sitting in it, we got like waited the 5 hours until we got to the point where it worked. So I have on my screens expecting to see like when like would fail out. And when it failed out, the screen stops for that particular scrolling message. And we get to that point, and at that point, it's very quick. So where it wasn't, it was like within like 80 to 90 seconds from the end of EDL. So like things are happening super fast. So I expected it to stop so I could see the failing message, and it just keeps scrolling. I was like, what's going on? Like, it's just, what's going on? And then I just paused for a moment. I was like, did it work? And I looked over, and like this mental, like it actually worked, took about 60 seconds. And by that time we were on the ground, and it like said, we're touching down safely. And this is in the mock-up, and we just looked at each other like, oh my God, it actually worked. Like we didn't expect it to. It worked. Like, and we're good. And that was the first time I was like, we did it. We're going to Mars. Like this was the thing that we needed to prove that we could actually go to Mars. And this was about a year and a half before we had to actually launch. So it was a decent time. Like we were kind of on schedule, but when we got to that moment, we're like, okay, like now we're going to Mars. Everything after that was a kind of like a button up, clean up, like make it prettier and nicer. But like that moment was the top of the hill for us of like, we're here, we got it, we did it. And now it wasn't honestly smooth sailing because the pandemic and whatnot, but like that was the top of our hill. Like we got here, like we did what we had to do. We're on the other side of the mountain now.
How exciting. What a great feeling I'm sure that was.
Yeah, we have a picture. We took a picture of it right at that moment, and it was like Polaroid collage. So we kind of relive it by looking at that picture every time.
I was going to ask you about some of your biggest challenges, but would that be one of your biggest challenges, or is there others?
I kind of look at that was one of our biggest successes. We still had a little bit of runway that if we hadn't gotten, like we could have spent another couple of weeks to do. There were other things that were bigger challenges. Like I was a year out from graduating with my PhD when my lab went bankrupt and like couldn't pay my tuition. And I thought I wasn't going to be able to graduate because I didn't have enough funds. So like trying to figure that out was definitely a more creative task. There was one time where I had to be in two places at once, and both spacecraft parts, like the mock-up and the real spacecraft, were not working. And we were on a deadline there within like 24 hours. And I was like running back and forth to try to solve these like instantly of how to get both sides and who needs to be where to solve both sides pretty imminently. So there are definitely challenges. When you ask the questions, actually, what I thought of as the biggest challenge was listening and communication skills in terms of what has been my biggest challenge over my career. Because as a child, I was a very shy child. I was the type who didn't want to answer the phone because I didn't know who was going to be on the other side. I didn't want to go up to the nurse's desk or the receptionist's desk to ask how much longer we had to wait for our conversation. Like wouldn't talk to adults that I didn't know or kids that I didn't know. Tried to do drama, but was told like I had no stage presence or no like acting ability. So working through that over my career has been a conscious choice. Like I did Toastmasters when I first got to JPL so I could prepare speaking in meetings and being comfortable with that type of extemporaneous speaking.
Look at you now.
I know, right? Like I talk about this. I'm like, it's just amusing that the same people that thought I shouldn't be on the screen or shouldn't be on the stage, like that's what kind of I ended up with at JPL of being that presence. But it's because of these moments where I forced myself into those uncomfortable positions to learn that skill, like getting up and doing the presentation. Like at JPL, we did media training, like where we actually did a 2-day course where they like took videos of us. We had to pretend we were getting radio intervision. They would give us very specific feedback of like, no, you can't, your eyes are not looking straight at the camera. You look shifty because you keep looking down, or like your hands are not like this. Like you need to be more succinct. You can't use these phrases. You can't wear this shirt on camera. Like all of these very specific training of like how to stand, how to look, how to be able to articulate your point in a very succinct manner. And then it's preparation and repetition, right? You just keep doing it until you feel comfortable enough with the subject and with your ability to present. So that skill has been something that I've been constantly honing to where I am today.
After a long work day, a lot of people go home and they sit there and they talk about their work day and their issues with their spouse. How does that work out for you? Does he get it?
Oh, he definitely gets it. I mean, my husband
Okay.
is also a space fan. He went to space camp when he was a
Okay.
child too. So, and
Oh,
he's
good.
quite smart, even though he chose to do medicine. It's not that he couldn't have done engineering. I actually remember
Mhm.
talking to him about my PhD and being able to say, like, something about this equation is not making sense, or like, I don't know how to do this thing. And he would actually like listen and be able to say, like, well, what about this? Like, did you try this? And even though he's not in the field at all, like, he would be able to give feedback on them. And it's pretty permeated our household. So my girls are definitely aware of it. And we have posters all over the house of the different space. I'm sure they've been to probably half of the different visitor centers for NASA by now.
It's good to have that support system when you balance what you're doing there and then coming home and having a family. And we were talking about this before, how exciting it is right now for the space industry, and things are really surging, and especially just general popularity. And everybody's like, "Ooh, this is the new way to make money." For somebody maybe new in the industry or thinking about the industry, what advice would you like to share with them?
I like to refer back to the JPL motto, which is dare mighty things. Space is hard. Even the number of times that we've gone so far now, it is a quite unforgiving location, but the mysteries that are there are so profound compared to those that we can answer on the earth that there's value there. But you have to be able to be willing to dare the many things. And that can apply for, starting the business or like finding a niche, or even for a student in their path of trying to figure out what they want to do. It's not about not knowing the risk you take or just like trying, but it's about appreciating the risk, preparing for it, and learning from any mistakes that happen along the way, and having the perseverance to continue. Because at the end, dare mighty things. The quote comes from a speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave, where it roughly says, "We choose to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, though checkered by failure, than to live with those poor souls who are in the gray twilight that know neither victory nor defeat." And I like to think of that as, you won't get the grand success if you're not willing to take the failure. And no matter how hard the failure is, the success will overpower it. And it's better to at least try
Right.
that and be brave, knowing that you could fail, knowing that there's a lot of preparation there, to live in this gray, what could have been space that you'll never know what you're capable of, or you'll never know what could have been, what could have revolutionized the industry because of your idea if you never actually try.
My papa used to always say, "Susan, you'll experience the bad or the negative, but it really makes you appreciate the good and the
Exactly.
positive." That's so true. This has been so exciting to talk to you. And I want to ask you one more thing, because things are evolving really quickly, and we've had Artemis, and like in the next year, in the next 12 months, what is your hope? What is your hope to see happen? Something big or exciting?
That's a really interesting question. And I don't know that I have an answer for you. There's just so much uncertainty right now about the next 12 months or the next 12
Mhm.
years where we are, that it could be super grand, and we could have a new set of missions as launches that land on the moon and demonstrate all these cool things, or it could
Building
be that
habitats?
building habitats, or like, new space launches, or it could be we're kind of status quo for the next year. There's still a lot of interesting science happening. The Psyche spacecraft is getting close to its Mars approach, so it's doing a lot of good science there. They have spacecraft like the Sphere-X mission that's doing this really cool all-sky survey of all the stars and galaxies in the planet. So you don't know new discoveries will come at what time, right? Because some of this data takes long time for scientists to understand actually, like, even if we've collected it from years before, like, what does it actually mean? How does it fit with the other data? And there's always the opportunity of, oh my God, I just discovered this, of like finally putting together the last piece of this data that was collected over the last, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And finally the jigsaw puzzle got completed and you discovered this thing. So I'm always hopeful of that type of thing.
Yeah. It could be that Friday in December before break.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Before we wrap up, Dr. Mohan, I want to ask if you have a passion project you'd like to talk about, either past or present.
I do. So I'm really passionate about helping children find their passion in STEM. So I had helped found a nonprofit called STEAM Superheroes a couple of years ago that was aimed at just exposing kids to STEM, to be able to find role models that were like them, that were, attainable superheroes. And then just in the last couple of months, I've kind of pivoted to creating my own organization called Arcturus STEM Academy, where we bring together actual curriculum that's taught by these STEM professionals in order to connect those that are interested in the field so that they can learn from the people doing it. So that depth of expertise and that passion for it will actually inspire them to be able to pursue that.
Well, that's exciting. How would somebody find out more information about that if they wanted to?
They can follow us on our Instagram, Arcturus STEM Academy, or go to our website, which is arcturusstemacademy.org.
Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed talking to you, and we would love to have you back again, please.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. Be sure to join us where we connect, collaborate, and accelerate. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe. Until next time, keep looking up. Oh, and live long and prosper.
Yeah.
Don't miss an episode. Subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. Watch us on YouTube and follow us on social media. Stars Launch Pod, propelling us forward, one launch at a time.